Guys, today I've been thinking about some things, specifically about the Shinhead lore, the Conehead lore. And if you didn't know yet, Shin has released a few new videos that unlock new pieces of lore. So first off, if you don't know what the Shinhead lore is, or the Conehead lore, Conehead/Shin lore, it's pretty much the lore where Shin, as we know him, or is that actually Shin? We'll say that later. Shin, as we know him, comes in. And pretty much the Coneheads are sad and lonely because they're taken over by the Krunks, are under their rule. But Shin comes in and Shin's every single Conehead, Krunk, calm down. And pretty much that's why he gets his name Shin the Shinster. But how do we know Shin wasn't trying to help the Krunks when doing this? How do we know Shin was just trying to look like a good guy so they didn't revolt on him? How do we know any of this? Starting off with the first piece of evidence, we can just to clarify one thing. We need to establish that who Shin is. Now, some people might get Shin confused with Fiery, when literally, as we know it, because Shin profile picture used to be Fiery. Some people may think Shin is Fiery. Now, I do believe that too, but I think there's another version of Shin that is trying to take over Fiery. So there's two versions of Shin. One version is Fiery Shin, the good version of Shin, the Shin that has died and pretty much is just not him anymore. For example, Anakin and Darth Vader. They're the same person, but it's different personalities. Anakin's a good version, but he's dead now, which is why we can hear in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, Anakin is gone. Just using that as an example. So pretty much Fiery is gone. Fiery Shin, his personality. And now we see him as a tin head, actually. We see Shin's bad guy version as a tin head. But to prove, so we now know that the main version of Shin right now is the tin head version. But to prove that he's a part of the Krunks, as we can see in this latest video, the Krunks versus the Tornado. First off, the title of the name in general, the Krunks versus the Tornado. What do you mean the Krunks versus the Tornado? Who is the Krunks? If the Krunks were the Krunks, I mean, Shin would be a part of the Krunks, or Tinhead shouldn't be a part of the Krunks. But you may not think that, but the thing is, well, who else would that be? It's always the case that Shin named the title, the Krunks versus Shin versus the Tornado. But instead, we see Tornado versus the Krunks, proving indefinitely that Shin is a part of the Krunks, the bad guys. Now that we got that established, you may not believe me about Shin being Fiery, being the Tin Head. Just to prove this, we can already establish that with his third latest video, which is Shin drinks the Grimace Shake. First off, the title in itself just shows Shin drinks the Grimace Shake, which shows that that was Shin in that video, and the only person drinking the Grimace Shake in that video was Shin. So now we wipe up that theory, and there's no no one can defend that. Now, with this, now we can prove who is the Krunks. The Krunks are, like we said, the bad guys and attack the Conehead. But if you don't know who YZ is the long lost friend of Shin. Pretty much YZ is the good guy in that Shin, as we know him, it has turned bad, which is exactly why in most of Shin's videos we never see YZ, or at least until the time where the Coneheads existed. But you know what's funny? In all of his videos, the Coneheads never existed, which further proves that there was no point into their own YZ, because he only came in and out when the Coneheads never existed. Now, with this information, we can finally prove something else. Here we have something called the Krunks scenario. Now, this will completely change the entire game of this theory and turn it to a different direction. The Krunks scenarios are pretty much where the Krunks go on certain things that completely change everything. Completely. And with this information, now we know that now we know that the Krunks in general are things. They go through certain scenarios that can change the entire redirection of the Coneheads. Now, to further prove this, now we can show that let's move on to BFDI. BFDI is obviously connected to the Shin Conehead lore. Obviously, we can see in the Krunks vs. the Tornado video that in the 4-second clip that Bubbles is running. That Bubble is running. Now, that shows that Bubble has access to people like Fiery, Shin, pretty much, Shin in parentheses, Leafy, etc., etc., etc. Now, with this information, now we can prove to you why. Now, just to add a little bit more evidence on why, Shin is obviously fiery. Pretty much, we can see Bubbles is obvious. Bubble is obviously friends with Shin. We can really see that even in this other video. Look at this peanut butter jelly time. We can see Bubble, Leafy, and guess who? I'll let you get a minute. Fiery. In which we already know that Fiery is Shin, just a different version of him, where he was actually a good guy. And now we can see in the Tin Heads that pretty much we can call Bubble a scared little minion, someone who follows Shin wherever he goes, whatever he does. Now with that information, we can finally show what happened to YZ. YZ, as we know, clearly has 3 versions. We have YZ grown, which is obviously YZ when she was a part of the Coneheads. So YZ is just YZ, and grown is YZ when she was a part of the Coneheads, and then there's somebody else, grown. Now, as we know, we can make a theory that everyone has, their own versions of each other. See, Bubbles, why do I keep saying Bubbles? Bubble actually has a version in Peanut Butter Jelly Time video where you can see where it's only black and white. And then we have a version where it's fully colored. Pretty much every single character has that version. So Shin, Tin Head, has where he is a tin head. Shin also has where he's fiery and where he's fiery but he is out of color. So he has 3 versions, but what is YZ's 3rd version? Grown. Now, as we know, YZ's first version, YZ, is normal. But, like Shin for example, Peanut Butter Jelly Time, fiery, out of color, doesn't really have a personality, meaning they're just normal. So, if Fiery is a bad guy, if Fiery a good guy, like for example, Fiery could equal like good guy, Conehead version of them, and that the out of color versions of them, aka YZ and out of color Fiery, would equal the same thing, then Grom and Shin Tinhead version could mean that this would mean that Grom might be a part of the Krunks. I know, this is a big part that completely changes everything. Now, if we go into the video again, we can see somebody, a few people, 2 people that go by and completely come by quickly. Now, if you can see, first off, let's just see this. I'm assuming the white person, we don't know who that is. We know that is somebody we know. But you see this person here who kills Shin? Who is that? Who is that we know? We don't know. This could be grown or not. Either one of them are grown, but they come in so quickly as if they're trying to hide themselves. And they kill Shin. Would show that grown probably is a bad version of grown, but just a version that is trying to get revenge. Very interesting, you say. But to further prove the Shin lore and prove that Shin's a bad guy, we already know Shin's a bad guy. We already know, and we can prove that Grom is this person here. But now, to finally rest it all. In conclusion, Shin is a bad guy, and Grom is, for example, let's just say some type of assassin that is trying to kill Shin, which they